welcome to Robyn Scherer Photography. I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to go over my editing workflow with you, and I have 3 images chosen. We will work through each of them, and I will go over the tools and sliders on my panel in Lightroom and tell you why and how I use them. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start with this image, and we'll go into develop. And the first thing I'll do is I'll hit my preset, and it's a little bit orange, so I'm going to go ahead and check my white balance. I'm going to grab my dropper, and I'm going to hit something white or gray to check my white balance. So that's not too far off. It's a little bit bright, so I'm going to pull down exposure a hair, and I'm going to increase warmth a little bit, and then I'm going to zoom in and check their skin tone. I'm going to use the eyedropper, and I'm going to check a mid-tone on her skin, so the bridge of the nose or up here on the forehead. So if I go to the bridge of the nose, on Caucasians, you typically want, if you see the RGB on the target, you want 75, 65, or 55. A couple points here or there won't make a difference, but you want that area, and then you can judge, does that skin tone look creamy? To me, it looks great, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. I will mention there are entire classes on how to get beautiful creamy skin tones. So one of them is at Click Photo School, and it's called Flawless. It's amazing. So it's a class in itself. So if you want to grab that or check it out, go ahead and do so. But there's, I'm sure, a ton of them. Next I'm going to do is crop. So I'm going to do an 8x10 with the rule of thirds. I'm going to pull this down. I want them in the center. So here we go. I'm going to leave them in the center here. Hit return. The next thing I'll do is smooth their skin. I'm not going to go over creating brushes in this particular class because I have a different video on that. And just know I already have a lot of brushes made. And once you do that for yourself, they're at your disposal, and it just makes editing super fast. This is my skin smoothing, and it just polishes the skin ever so slightly to make it seem creamy and beautiful. I'm going to zoom in here because I see a little spot. I'm going to use the healing tool. If you use the healing, cloning's very specific and sharp. The healing's a lot more forgiving. So I'm going to use that here. Let's see what it chooses. Too dark. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And I like that. And I see a little spot here on her face. So I'm going to zoom into 200. Get that spot off. Let's see what it grabs. Her hair. Why? I don't know. But you can move it. So something that's a lot more similar to that area, and then it just takes it right off. So I'm going to go back to 100 and be a little bit more particular. Grab the skin smoothing brush, choose it again, and it's a different mask. And I'm going to go in there and just gently smooth it. And then I'll also grab my eye brush and just pop on her eyes, brighten them up just a little bit. When I zoom back out, that's about all I'm going to do for this particular image. I will talk about greens for just a second. People are particular about their greens. My preset has adjustments for greens already in it. If you hit saturation in the HSL panel, you can see my greens and yellows are pulled down. I just think this is a more natural green tone. If you move the slider to extremes, you can see what happens. But that's where I like my greens, so my preset is already set for that. And you can do the same for yourself in creating your preset, or if you buy any. If you buy a preset, I will say this, you can tweak it and save it as your particular Susie's basic preset, knowing that you bought the preset, you tweaked it to make it look like how you want things to look, and then save it as yours. That way you just hit that basic preset and put it on your images if that's what you want to do. So moving forward, we'll hit a headshot now. So this is Sook straight out of camera. Again, I'm going to hit a white or a gray and check my white balance. A little too pink. I'm going to reset that back to Sook, hit my basic preset, too orange. Now I'm going to hit the whites of her eyes to get a basic white balance, too cool. So I'm going to brighten that up, and I'm going to brighten exposure. That looks a lot more normal to me. Now I will test her skin again with my eyedropper. perfect. 85, 78, 68 is a perfect reading for, again, Caucasian skin. Again, there's readings for all skin tones. She just happens to be Caucasian. You can have 75, 65, 55 for Caucasians, or 85, 78, 68. Either way, you'll get a beautiful creamy skin tone. I love this. I'm going to leave it. Let's go to cropping. Now I'm going to do an 8 by 10. Now, if you hit your option button on a Mac and you hit your O, the letter O, you can cycle through different cropping tools. That's the rule of thirds, golden triangle here, golden ratio. I'm going to go back to this one, and you want your focal point here or both. I'm going to move this to her eye and hit return. That's where I want my viewer to look. So that's what's happening. Let's go ahead and smooth her skin. Grab a brush. I'll choose a different one just for kicks. This is my skin texture. This is really smoothing. And you can see it's almost getting rid of all of her freckles. Not all of them, but quite a bit. I don't love that because you want them to remain natural. So if you go, oh, that's too sharp, and you have a different brush like my skin smoothing, it'll click it to that, which is a lot more just polished and not so crazy. I will pop her eyes now. Now, that's too white. So these are the settings for that particular brush. I'm going to go into my exposure. I'm going to drop it. So they're sharp, but more normal, and we'll get out of there. I'm going to come in close. Now, there's a couple of spots. I'm going to grab my healing tool, get rid of some mascara there, get rid of this red spot. And then I saw that she had a spot right here. So I'm going to get rid of that. Now, I'm going to, under her eyes, I'm going to use my skin texture that we had chosen earlier. This is really great for under eye. It just smooths it ever so gently, and then you can pop the exposure and it just lifts it up just a hair. Here's the before, hit your backslash button after. It just kind of lets you know where you are. So this is beautiful. I think she looks amazing. I will get rid of this hair, and that I'll use the cloning because the cloning is very specific. Let's see what it grabs. So I'm going to bring it over. It's too sharp because the feather is too small. I'm going to make the feather greater, which makes it a lot more forgiving. And so you can see it didn't grab all the hair. So if you can make it bigger right here. See that? And then it'll get rid of all the hair there. So before, after. You just want to polish the images. And it'll depend on your style and your branding and how crazy you want to get. I try to do just a polished look, nothing crazy. Okay, let's go to the next image here. And okay, I'm going to hit the basic preset. I'm going to grab my white balance. Too cool. This is a sunset session. I wanted it warmer. Warm it up, bring down the exposure. Now I'm going to hit the cropping tool. I'm going to go back to my rule of thirds here, and you'll see why. I wanted the girls highlighted. And then I'm going to make sure that's on the horizon. Beautiful. Okay. First things first, their skin tone. She's too orange because the sun's hitting her. This is where you can use the luminance slider in the HSL panel. If you bring it all the way up, you see what happens. So you just want to bring it up a hair just so she's not so orange. Perfect. What we'll do now is go back in, check skin tones with the eyedropper. So I'm going to check a mid-tone here. Gorgeous. 87, 78, 65. Beautiful. She looks beautiful. She's pretty much the same. So now we know they have beautiful skin tones. I'm going to go ahead and use the healing tool and get rid of these little spots here. Reduce the size of that brush. And grab this one. Beautiful. Back out. And I'm going to grab the skin smoothing. Just do a little bump on the skin, just a little bit. Beautiful. Now, I see that there's a bruise here, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Perfect. Now, let's go ahead and use the brush and make this water pop just for fun. Give it some texture. So I'm going to grab my sharp subject. Again, here's the settings. Little exposure, little highlight, a little clarity. I'm going to make my brush bigger. You can see the water starting to pop. Now you can hit the texture and watch it. Just gets sharper. And I like that, so I'm going to leave it. Let's talk about the sky. You can mask it and choose the sky, which is always a better option than the linear in this particular case, because the linear will leak down onto them. I'll show you that in a second. So here, if you want to make the sky pop, you'll bring down the exposure, bring up the blacks, bring up the shadows. Now, to get fun, you can do a little bit of magenta, a little bit of saturation, and now that looks like a sunset sky. So you could make this a sky preset by naming it. So save as new preset. So we can call it sunset sky. Now, any other image in this little section of the shoot, you can pretty much pop that sky in and it'll work. I can't guarantee it'll work on different locations, but it does work for this one. But I'm going to delete it and show you how the linear gradient works. You pull that down, do the same things here. I'm just going to do it a little messy, but bring up the blacks. What happens is you see it leak down on them a little bit. So I do feel like the sky mask is better. So I can do that now. Select sky, and now I'll go back down to that brush, sunset sky, here, and it pops on. Beautiful. The next thing you could do here is get rid of these people. I'm going to reduce the feather so it grabs more in the circle. I'll just do a couple. And then you see what it selects. So this selected something right next to it, so that worked beautifully. This guy's sitting, it went down here, so that's not good. You'll move it up. Again, you want it on the same plane. You want it to mesh. This lady in orange, it went right next to it. Perfect. This guy, I want to mention him. He's on wet and dry sand, so you want to make sure you keep that in mind when you're adjusting, so that I'll show you when we pull out. So let's make the feather a little greater. You want it, the eye to not catch that. So that looks like it was there, and that's what you want to do. You could get picky and keep getting rid of all these people, absolutely. But basically, this is what I would do with this particular image. I would go in here and very much hand edit all these people out and make it very smooth. So it just looked like they were the only people on the beach, which is what they wanted. So that is 3 images and how I would edit them and my workflow. And I have another video on creating brushes if you want to check that out. Anyways, I hope you hit subscribe, and I hope this helped. And I'm glad you came along. All right, take care.